I didn't fall in love with her. I fell in love with the idea that she would fix what I never had the courage to face. That's the part I avoided admitting, even to myself. It's strange, isn't it? A man can build empires, command respect, move through rooms like he owns the air, and still carry something unfinished inside him. Something quiet. Something unformed. And instead of confronting it, he looks for someone to hold it for him. That's what I did. I remember one night, late past the hour where distractions die. The room was dim, city lights leaking through the curtains. She was asleep beside me, peaceful, still, untouched by the noise in my head. And I was awake, staring at the ceiling like it owed me answers. I should have felt calm. I should have felt complete. But there was this weight in my chest I couldn't explain. Not pain, not anxiety. Just this quiet pressure like something inside me was waiting to be acknowledged, and I kept ignoring it. So I turned slightly, looked at her, and told myself the lie that made everything easier. She's the reason this feeling will disappear. That was the moment. I didn't realize it then. But that's when I stopped seeing her as a person and started seeing her as a solution. And that's dangerous. Because when you turn someone into your answer, you stop asking yourself the real questions. Like, why do I feel empty when everything in my life looks right? Why do I need someone else's presence to feel at peace with my own? Why is silence so loud when I'm alone? I buried those questions under affection, under attention, under the illusion of connection. And she gave me something real, something honest. But I wasn't meeting her there. I was taking what she gave and using it to quiet something she didn't even know existed inside me. That's the uncomfortable truth no one likes to admit. Sometimes you don't love someone for who they are. You love them for what they help you avoid. Sit with that for a second, because I didn't. I kept showing up like I was present, texting, calling, being there physically. But internally, I was hiding. Not from her, from myself. And the worst part? I thought I was doing everything right. I thought effort was enough. I thought consistency meant depth. I thought being there was the same as being seen. It's not. There's a difference between giving someone your time and giving them your truth. And I wasn't giving her that. I gave her the version of me that looked solid, composed, in control. The man who had answers. The man who didn't hesitate. The man who didn't need saving. But underneath that, I was hoping she'd see through it. Hoping she'd somehow reach into the parts of me I refused to touch and make them whole, without me ever having to admit they were broken. Tell me something. Have you ever expected someone to understand a pain you've never even had the courage to name? Because I did, and I resented her, silently, for not fixing something I never exposed. That's how twisted it gets. You start holding people accountable for wounds they didn't create, just because you handed them the responsibility of healing them. I didn't say it out loud, but my actions did. Every time I pulled away instead of opening up, every time I chose control over connection, every time I convinced myself, she'll figure it out. No, she couldn't, because I never let her see the truth. And maybe that's why it hurts the way it does now. Not because she left, but because she was never given a fair chance to love the real me. Only the version of me that needed her to be something she never signed up to be. And I can't help but think back to that night, her breathing steady beside me, while I laid there, staring into the dark, waiting for a feeling to disappear that wasn't hers to fix. I keep replaying that moment. Because if I had just turned toward myself instead of toward her, if I had faced what was sitting in my chest instead of outsourcing it, maybe everything after that would have been different. Or maybe, no. That's the part I still haven't fully understood. Winning doesn't feel the way you think it does. No one tells you that. They show you the cars, the rooms, the quiet authority in a man's voice when he knows he's untouchable. But they never show you what happens when the noise fades and you're left alone with yourself. I learned how to control everything. My time, my habits, my emotions, at least the ones people could see. I became the kind of man who doesn't react, he decides. And it worked. Doors opened. People listened. I walked into rooms and felt the shift. Subtle but undeniable. Respect has a sound. It's quiet, but you hear it. But here's the part that started bothering me. Why did it feel so empty the moment I was alone? I remember one night, another late one. Different city. Different room. Same silence. The lights were off, but I didn't sleep. My phone was face down on the table. No notifications. No distractions. Just me, and that familiar stillness pressing in from all sides. I had everything I once thought would fix me. And yet, there it was again. That feeling. Not pain. Not sadness. Just absence. Like something essential was missing, but I couldn't name it. And the more I tried to ignore it, the louder it became. So I did what I always do. I tightened control. More discipline. More structure. Wake up earlier. Push harder. Stay sharper. If something feels off, dominate it. Fix it. Eliminate it. That's how I was built. But this didn't respond to pressure. You can't outwork something that lives inside you. And that realization, that's where the cracks started forming. Because for the first time, my usual strategies failed me, and I didn't know who I was without them. Here's an uncomfortable truth you won't hear often. A man can become so powerful on the outside that he forgets he's still fragile on the inside. And when those two realities collide, it doesn't look like a breakdown. It looks like silence, functional, composed, still moving forward. But internally, something's off. Something's disconnected. I started noticing it in small moments, laughing in conversations that didn't reach me, sitting across from people who admired me, and feeling nothing, looking at her, and for a split second, feeling distance where there should have been depth. That scared me, not in a loud way, in a quiet, creeping way, because I couldn't tell if I was losing her or losing my ability to feel her. And that's a different kind of fear. Tell me something. Have you ever built a version of yourself so strong that it stopped letting anything real get in? Because that's what I was starting to see. All that control, it came with a cost. Every wall I built to protect my focus also kept out connection. Every time I chose logic over vulnerability, I made it harder to be understood. And I told myself that's just the price of becoming who I am. But was it? Or was I just hiding behind strength because I didn't know how to be seen without it? That question stayed with me longer than I expected. Because the truth is, I didn't feel like I needed anyone. And that sounds powerful until you realize what it actually means. It means no one can reach you. Not fully. Not even her. And I think she felt that before I did. I think she sensed the distance in moments I dismissed. In the way I listened, but didn't open. In the way I showed up, but held something back she couldn't access. And I kept thinking, I'm doing enough. But enough for who? For her? Or for the version of me that refuses to go deeper? That's the trap. You become so efficient at being who you need to be for the world that you forget how to be real with the person right in front of you. And the scariest part? You don't even notice it happening. Until one day, the connection you thought was solid starts feeling thin, not broken, just less alive. And you don't know when it started, or how to fix it, or if it was ever real in the way you believed it was. I still think about that, because everything looked right from the outside. Everything. And yet something underneath it was already slipping. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just enough to go unnoticed. Until it wasn't. And what I didn't realize at the time was that this quiet distance I was feeling wasn't just inside me. It was already growing between us. And by the time I understood that, no, that's not even the part that bothers me most. It's what I did next that I can't ignore. It didn't explode. That's what makes it dangerous. No shouting. No slammed doors. Just a quiet ending. The kind that slips into your life like it belongs there. I remember the night with uncomfortable clarity. The room was dim, not dark, just enough light leaking through the curtains to outline everything in shadows. My jacket was still on the chair, my shoes by the door. I hadn't even fully settled in. Her name lit up my phone. I didn't rush to open it. That was my first mistake. See, I had trained myself not to react, to stay composed, measured, in control. Nothing gets urgency from me unless I decide it deserves it, so I let it sit there for a few seconds longer than I should have, as if time itself would adjust to my pace. It didn't. When I finally opened the message, something felt off before I even read the words. You ever get that feeling? Like your body knows something your mind hasn't caught up to yet? Yeah, it was that. Short, clean, final, no accusations, no emotion spilled across the screen, just clarity. And somehow that hurt more. Because chaos, I know how to handle. Give me anger, give me resistance, I can work with that. But calm detachment? There's nothing to fight. I read it once, then again. Slower. And for the first time in years, I didn't know what to say. Not because I didn't have words, but because none of them felt real enough. Every response that came to mind sounded like something I'd say to maintain control, not something I'd say to tell the truth. So I just sat there, phone in my hand, silence pressing in. And then it hit me. Not all at once, but in waves. That feeling in my chest, it wasn't panic. It was exposure. Like something I had been avoiding finally stepped forward and said, "Now you don't get to look away." I stood up, walked across the room, then back again. Pointless movement. The kind you make when you're trying to escape something that's already inside you. And that's when it happened. The shift. Not loud. Not dramatic, but real. For a brief moment, I felt it all collapse. Not my life, not my image, just the version of me I had been holding together so tightly. The one who always knows what to do, the one who doesn't get caught off guard, the one who doesn't lose. And I hated that feeling, because it wasn't just about her message, it was about what it revealed. That I wasn't as in control as I thought. That all that distance I kept between me and everything real, it didn't protect me. It delayed this exact moment. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The more you avoid vulnerability, the more violent it feels when it finally hits you. And I felt it. In my chest. In my throat. In the way my thoughts stopped making sense for a second. I leaned against the wall. Closed my eyes. And for a split second, just a second, I wanted to undo everything. Not the success. Not the discipline. Just the moments I chose control over connection. The times I could have said something real and didn't. The times I felt her pulling away and convinced myself it was temporary. The moments I knew something was off and decided to stay silent because silence felt safer. Tell me something. Have you ever lost someone and realized in that exact moment that you had multiple chances to prevent it? Not fix it. Prevent it. Because that's different. Fixing requires effort. Preventing requires awareness. And I had the awareness. I just didn't act on it. That's what stayed with me as I stared at that screen. Not regret in the way people talk about it. Not sadness either. It was something sharper. Accountability. And I wasn't used to feeling that. Not like this. Because there was no one to blame. Not her. Not timing. Not circumstances. Just me. Standing there in a half-lit room, holding a message that didn't just end something, it exposed something. And I think that's what broke me. Not the loss. The clarity. The realization that this wasn't sudden. It wasn't unexpected. It was earned. Slowly. Quietly. Over time. And I had watched it happen, without ever calling it what it was. I looked at the phone again, still in my hand, still waiting for a response I couldn't form. And for the first time, I didn't try to fix it. I didn't type. I didn't defend. I didn't reach for control. I just stood there, feeling something I had avoided for a long time. Powerless. And maybe that was the moment everything actually changed. Not when she sent the message, but when I realized I had no version of myself left to hide behind. Because if I'm being honest, what scared me in that moment wasn't losing her. It was what came after. The silence. The space. The version of me I'd be forced to face, without her there to soften it. And I still don't know if I was ready for that, or if I just had no choice. It wasn't the message that kept me awake that night. It was the truth hiding behind it. See, losing her forced me into something I had avoided for a long time. Reflection without excuses. No noise. No distractions. Just me. And a version of events I couldn't manipulate. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone face down now, like that would somehow silence what was already echoing in my head. The room felt different. Same walls, same shadows, but heavier. Because for the first time, I wasn't asking, why did she leave? I was asking something far more uncomfortable. Where did I fail to see her? That question doesn't let you hide. It doesn't care about your intentions. It doesn't care how hard you think you tried. It only cares about what was real and what wasn't. And the more I sat with it, the clearer things became. Not all at once. Not like some dramatic realization. More like pieces of a truth I had been stepping over, finally arranging themselves in front of me. I remembered moments I had dismissed. Her pauses in conversation. The way she'd look at me like she was deciding whether to say something, then choosing not to. The slight distance in her voice that I told myself was just a mood. It wasn't. It was communication, just not the kind I respected. Because it wasn't loud. Here's the pattern interrupt no one prepares you for. Silence isn't the absence of communication. It's often the final stage of it. And I missed that. No, I ignored it. Because acknowledging it would have required me to step out of control and into something uncertain. Vulnerability. And I wasn't built for that. Or at least that's what I told myself. So I stayed where I was strongest. Logic, structure, predictability. If something felt off, I analyzed it. If she seemed distant, I gave her space. If emotions got complicated, I simplified them. Sounds reasonable, right? It's not. Because love doesn't operate on efficiency. And I was treating it like a system to optimize. That's the uncomfortable truth I had to face. I didn't love her in a way she could feel. I loved her in a way that made sense to me. There's a difference. A dangerous one. Because you can be fully committed and still emotionally unavailable. You can show up every day and still not be present where it matters. And I did that. Over and over again. I thought consistency was enough. That being reliable was the same as being deeply connected. But connection requires exposure, and I gave her controlled access. Only the parts of me that didn't threaten my identity, the strong parts, the stable parts, the parts that never break. But she wasn't asking for perfection. She was asking for truth, and I held that back, not intentionally. That's what makes it worse, because it means I wasn't even aware of what I was withholding. Tell me something. Have you ever convinced yourself you were giving someone everything, when in reality, you were only giving them what felt safe? That realization, it changes how you see everything. I started replaying conversations in my head. Not the words, the spaces between them. The moments where she needed reassurance, and I gave her logic. The moments where she needed presence, and I gave her solutions. The moments where she needed to feel chosen, and I assumed she already knew. Assumptions. They destroy more relationships than mistakes ever will, because at least mistakes are visible. Assumptions? They operate in silence, and I built an entire connection on things I thought she understood, without ever making sure she actually did. That's on me. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. It wasn't just one moment I got wrong. It was a pattern, a slow drift between what she needed and what I was capable of giving at the time. And instead of closing that gap, I justified it. Told myself she was strong enough, patient enough, understanding enough. But here's the part that hits harder than anything else. Just because someone understands you doesn't mean they feel loved by you. Read that again. Because I had her understanding, I had her patience, but I didn't have her emotional certainty. And that's what she needed most. Not my strength, not my stability. Me, unfiltered, uncontrolled, real. And I gave her a version of that, just enough to keep things going, but never enough to make her feel fully secure. That's the truth I had to sit with, in that quiet room, in that heavy silence, knowing that I didn't lose her because I didn't care. I lost her because I didn't know how to care in the way she needed. And by the time I understood that, no, that's not even the part that stayed with me. It's what I realized right after that changes everything. Because once you see your pattern, you can't go back to who you were before. And the question becomes, what do you do with that awareness? When the person you needed to show it to is already gone, I became the man she needed, right after she stopped needing me. That's not growth. That's timing playing a cruel game. You ever notice how clarity shows up late? Not when you're building something, not when it could actually save it, but after it's already gone. I didn't change overnight. It started in silence. Same room, same nights. But something was different now. The distractions didn't work anymore. Music felt like noise. Conversations felt shallow. Even the wins felt delayed, like they belonged to someone else. Because for the first time, I wasn't running from anything. I was sitting with it. I remember standing in front of the mirror one night. No lights except a faint glow from the hallway. Just enough to see my outline, not enough to hide behind details. And I asked myself something I had never asked before. Who are you when there's no one left to perform for? That question doesn't let you lie. Not when it's just you and the version of you that failed. And I didn't like the answer. Not because I was weak, but because I realized how much of my strength was built on avoiding certain truths. That's the uncomfortable part. I wasn't becoming better. I was becoming more honest. And honesty strips things down. It removes the image, the control, the excuses. It leaves you with patterns. Patterns you can't ignore anymore. I started noticing things about myself I used to justify. How I'd pull away the moment something felt too real. How I'd default to logic when emotions demanded presence. How I'd convince myself I was protecting my peace, when in reality, I was protecting my comfort. There's a difference, and I didn't see it before. But now it was everywhere. In the way I spoke, in the way I listened, in the way I avoided saying things that actually mattered. And the worst part? I knew exactly what to do now. That's what makes this phase so brutal. You finally understand how to show up, how to communicate, how to feel without shutting down. But the person you needed to show that to isn't there anymore. Tell me something. Have you ever evolved into the right person for the wrong timing? Because that's where I found myself, becoming someone new, with no one to recognize it. And that's a lonely kind of growth, not the dramatic kind, not the kind people applaud, the quiet kind, the kind where you sit with yourself and realize you were the problem, not entirely, but enough to change the outcome. And that realization, it humbles you, not in a soft way, in a way that forces you to rebuild how you see everything. Love, effort, presence. I stopped looking at relationships like something to maintain and started seeing them as something to experience, fully, honestly, without control. And that shift, it changes how you move. Now, when something feels off, I don't analyze it to death. I face it. When I care, I say it. When I feel something real, I don't hide behind timing or pride or whatever excuse feels convenient, because I've already seen what happens when you wait. You don't lose people instantly. You lose them gradually, then suddenly, and by the time it becomes obvious, it's already over. That's the lesson I carry now, not as regret, but as awareness. But here's the part I don't talk about often. Even with all this growth, all this clarity, there's still a question that lingers, not loudly, just enough to stay with me. Because sometimes, late at night, when everything slows down again, I think about her, not in a way that pulls me back, but in a way that makes me wonder, if she saw me now, if she experienced this version of me, would it change anything? Or is timing something no amount of growth can fix? And that's the part I haven't answered yet, because there's a difference between becoming better and getting another chance to prove it. And I don't know which one matters more. Maybe neither. Or maybe the real question isn't whether she would recognize me now. It's whether I would recognize the version of myself who let her walk away and understand why he thought he had more time than he actually did.